Hey everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Thursday with Melissa and Dr. Thomas, and we are here for your Thursday consciousness conversation. Looking forward to having today's conversation because I know there's a lot of big energies out there with the 222 portal yesterday, and then today we have the two repeating numbers 22 and 33. So let's talk about patterns today because I know that we have a lot of recurring patterns in our lives that sometimes happen that are very unconscious. They can be very self-sabotaging, and they can also be how we are hindering ourselves without recognizing it. So, how are you today?
You mind talking?
Oh, okay. So, one of the things that I talked about yesterday, I did the 222 portal reading. So, if you didn't get a chance to look at that, that is on my YouTube channel. But really, what I was getting to in that and what the information was being given to me in that reading was that we are coming into some harmony and we are coming into some balance. And when we are coming into some balance and harmony in our lives, that means that there's something that has to be transformed or released. That for us to come into balance is we got to kind of look at what isn't working and what is working and letting go of what isn't working and really coming into terms with what resonates more with us than what has not resonated with us, but we have kind of stayed in because it was comfortable. And that is really important for us to understand that in evolution, which is this 222 portal is bringing us is evolution, is that we are going to have to get uncomfortable. And as humans, we really struggle with that. We want to be safe and stable. It's that fight or flight. We want to stay in taking care of ourselves so we don't get into those extremes. And unfortunately, evolution and growth is all about really looking at where we need to change or move away from or move toward. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. And just know that whatever you're experiencing right now in your life is kind of what needs to be brought up, to looked at. Is it something I need to put more attention to, or is it something I need to give less attention to? As your divine feminine and divine masculine are starting to be harmonized or balanced in these energies. So, hello, Cynthia. How are you? I'm glad you're here today.
So
So,
I couldn't jump in. I wasn't going to jump in because the energy was extremely strong and moving at the very beginning of this. Oh shit! I still is very powerful and strong. What you were saying is 100% right. Not yet. What
I can
you
feel
were
their excitement.
right. What you are saying is perfectly correct, right, in which because it is the time. It's the time we talked about this. It is a time of growth. The spring is almost here. The March, this time period, it's the time of growing and development. We're getting out of the old and the musty ways, and we're getting into the betterment, the growth, the new life of the earth. And so that is where we're going to, and that is where we're stepping into. So the this whole thing, everything you're feeling, it is about to climax to a better, and it's about to shed all that off to bring forth things you've been looking for, things you've been manifesting, because the growth is happening. So whatever you're feeling now, bring it in love. Bring it to love. Be in love. And it will be as it should be. And you will then see the growth of that which you want coming from that. But it's very important for now to bring it to love so that it can be released into the universe. That which is heavy, that is which is anxious, that is which fear, that is which not is the highest and good, to bring it away. And you will then start seeing the growth happen very soon because we're almost there.
And I know that many people are experiencing uncomfortable feelings also, because there's a lot of activation and downloads happening right now that is waking people up or energizing people, bringing people into connection with their own sovereignty and with their own connection to their divinity, spiritual DNA being woken up. So there's a lot of shifts happening at the biological and cellular levels that many people are experiencing right now that are making them feel very uncomfortable. But it's all in that harmonizing. It's all of that bringing you into that divinity and that sovereignty that allows you to know that you are part of the whole, that you come into this life being very connected, and that connection is there to help you in your purpose or for your life mission, or however you want to phrase it. But right now, those energies are really activating different systems in your body that can make you also feel physically tired. Ear ringing is huge right now. I've talked to many people experiencing that ascension symptom. Headaches, fatigue, out of sorts, in some cases nausea, or not being able to eat certain things, drink certain things that they're used to eating and drinking. So right now, I would say in these energies, as you're being balanced physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, to kind of give yourself grace if you need to take time. Give yourself grace if you're releasing a relationship. Give yourself grace if you're changing your job or walking away from a goal or a plan that you realize is just outdated or outmoded. I think one of the patterns we get caught up in is, I have to do that because that's what I've always done, or I have to go towards that goal because I've been going towards it for so long. And so sometimes we don't even recognize that it's okay to kind of deviate or change directions from a goal or something we were going towards, because maybe when we started it fit, but now who we are and the energy that we bring to the table around it isn't matching. It doesn't resonate anymore. And so I feel like many of us get caught up in these patterns of have to, or it's how I've always done it, or it's what people expect of me. And so there's, this kind of like, it's okay to sit down with yourself and really have that really kind of honest conversation with yourself about, do I still want this thing? Is this thing still valuable to me? Or is this thing still giving to me? Do I still resonate with it the way I did maybe when I started it, or even 6 months ago? So, in these energies, I think it's okay that as you're being brought to like places of your life to reevaluate, like take the time to reevaluate it. Especially if you're finding yourself in a position to be able to take the time and space, it's important.
Mm-hmm. So I like how you mentioned this, because I actually did a channel message last night and today. I don't know if the last night one is loaded yet. It's taking forever, but it was on the soul and the ego. And one thing I put out there is, as we go on our journeys, if we're listening with our soul, we're letting our soul. It's different. If we're listening with our soul, we are driving the car, but the road is being created for us by our soul.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where it's going to go and how it's going to be. But as you go along, you might see some patterns, or what was the right turn at one point may now be a different turn when you get it from a different angle. Because you will go around in circles and loops. It's not that you're going around in circles. It's just sometimes what you want, you might not be ready for.
Mm-hmm.
What you want, the other people around you might not be ready for. And so you do got to go on your journey and your growth, and you take it back to things, and what different things are going to happen, different choices are going to come in front of you, and it's okay. It's not always saying, well, the last time I said no, so it's always going to be no. As you grow, your choice can be different. Now, when the ego does it, that was wrong. Now, when the ego is pushing the car.
Mm-hmm.
The path is, they don't even worry about the path. They're pushing you where you want to go. And so you don't even get the control of driving it. The ego pushes you to where you want to go. That's a different topic. But let's get into this idea of these patterns that you face. Okay? The patterns that are out there, the patterns that we face in our lives. I'll use myself as an example. I talked about this before in a couple of my lives. February has been very tough for me. Very tough. It was 6 years ago, 2017. Yeah, when I got probably the worst news I've gotten ever. Uh, and every February has been something. And then last year, it was once again bad. If ever happened, oh my goodness. And at the end of the month, I saw the beginning of the switch. It was in the last day of the month that I got the first switch. It was at the close of it all. And if I sit back, I can see the pattern, and I knew what started it, because what started it is what ended it. And it took me those years to end it. So my cycle was always going on, but I had to step back. So like this year, it's interesting because this year is a transition year. Now, when you go through things in life and the patterns happen in cycles, it doesn't mean we're going to wipe you clean and now you start over. It means we're still going to bring things back to you, but you're going to see a pattern. You're still going to have some choices. You're going to see choices that are always bad and not good. They can be irrelevant. The synchronicity is going to it. But they're just reminders sometimes of, hey, this is still here. Just because you went through the cycle and completed the cycle and you were able to change the pattern and go up to where you want to go, it doesn't mean those things don't exist at this level too. They are still there. So like for me, this month, I've seen a lot of patterns. I'm like, holy shit, that's from that year. That's from this year. That's happened. But the beauty of it all is what you're able to do is if you can step away, if you can step back on yourself, very tough to do. I'll admit it for me, I was always been someone that can be observant or what was I looking for? Objective. No matter what was going on, it just was natural for me to be objective. And when I got into my doctoral studies, it was more about being objective, being observant, looking what's going on from a different lens. But the challenge is, can you do that for yourself? That is not easy, because what that involves is you stepping back and actually analyzing things that you don't want to discover about yourself. Because there are patterns we all have. There are habits we do. And if they got exposed to us, we would deny it, we would excuse it, and we wouldn't think anything of it. Because
oh gosh, seriously. I mean, just about 3 years ago, my father said something to me about one of my patterns that I hadn't even recognized, and I was so offended. I can't even tell you how offended I was. And then I went home and sat with myself and went, yeah, he's right. That hurt. That hurt. But now I could look at it and be like, okay, we have to fix that.
Right. And it's tough.
Yeah.
Because one, we don't notice them ourselves.
No.
And even when we do, we don't want to change them, because a lot of times the patterns that we're in bring us, ready for this? I'm bringing it all back together. Our ego base now, and bring us to comfort. Because what does the ego do? The ego brings us to a path that we already know because of the results that will happen there, and brings us comfort. So I'm not going to use the example that I could use because it's burning in my head. I'm not going to use it, but I'm going to make it up. All right? But let's say you were... Gosh, Antonio, you didn't want to hurt someone. So instead of saying something bad, when you're with them, what do people do? What do people do when they're with people they don't like? I'll give you a hint. All right, take the straw out of this and chug it like this. It's almost the same color, isn't it? What do people do when they are afraid of a situation, they're nervous about the situation, because deep down they know they don't really want to be there.
So they self-soothe.
Exactly. And then you look at these patterns and you see how this pattern. So instead of growing from the situation and turning and growing yourself, then that comes into something that's there. Same thing with avoidance. We all avoid people. We all avoid adversity, avoid conflict, growth.
I want to take it back to the patterns. I want to take it back to the pattern for a minute, because I think this is one that everyone on some level can understand. I mean, think about credit card debt. Think about house foreclosure. Think about car repossession. Think about how many times you've met someone who's had that situation happen more than once in their life, right? Because they didn't have that intention going into their financial situation each time, but it got led there because they were still doing the comfortable things in that situation. So I think that many people can, if you can't relate to this like on a relationship level, I mean, just think about like very financial, stability. You may not go into certain situations thinking, oh, I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to go bankrupt, I'm going to use chapter 7 again. But, for some people, it's like, oh, shoot, I got here again. I didn't recognize my patterns were keeping me going on this road. And now here I am again, and I have to do this. So yeah, these patterns can be like, and those patterns I'm talking about, that takes a long time to get there. So we're talking, you decade after decade after decade, you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Right. And that's what we do. And so how do you combat it? How do you step up? I'll be extremely blunt. It's not easy. It's very hard. And it's even harder for the person that sees it to say anything.
Well, because then it's easy for you to go, well, you're the bad guy, because you're the one that pointed it out. So it's got to be your problem or your fault. But I think you're right in that you're right. People stay in these patterns because it's easy. Because think about it. To change that pattern, you really have to go deep and look at what is causing the pattern. And that's when we're talking about the issues in your tissues. Whether it's that resentment you've been carrying since you were a toddler, if it's that resentment you've been carrying since you were a teenager, if it's that betrayal, threat, all those big core beliefs that we get ingrained within us, changing those are not easy. And it may even take 1 or 2 or 3 different modalities, whether it's energy, talk therapy, traditional medicine, Western medicine, Eastern medicine, energy work. Like you have to get honest with yourself about why you're doing the things you're doing. And that can be really uncomfortable. Like, to really like out yourself to yourself, like that can be one of the most uncomfortable things you do.
And I'll use myself as an example here. I'll go back to, there's a lot of things I had to change. I had a lot of lack mentality back in the day, but I'm going to go more recent. Ever since my separation started, all that stuff, I lost Melissa. See, Melissa just had to leave us there. All right. But I'll use my example here. Like, ever since my marriage was falling apart, what did I automatically think I had to do? What do most people think they have to do? Find someone else. Fast and go. And it's like, you find someone, you get on the dating sites, because that's what people do nowadays. You get on the dating sites, and you don't find someone and then get off. And you find someone, you get off. And it's just a pattern. I had to sit down. And I had to tell myself, I had to listen to myself and say, stop. First and foremost, you might think you're ready, because we all think we're ready. We all think we are ready for whatever it is, to face whatever challenge that is out there, to break any patterns, to be what it is. But we all need healing when change happens. And it's self-healing. And I eventually realized all I was doing is putting myself out there, taking away from my own self, stretching myself thin, trying to impress these people or be that or be whatever, when I didn't know who I was. And it's tough, because you know what you want? Whether it is we're talking about a relationship, whether it is we're talking about just getting by with family structures and family people that we're living with, whatever it is, we want that comfort. We've said the word comfort many times. We want that comfort. We want that, I'm going to use hope, it's the wrong word, it's faith.
Yeah, I like it.
We want that thing, that desire that's in front of us. And the only way we've known to get it from all the past is doing it a certain way. And for me, stepping aside from those, I'm gonna call them the dating sites for months at a time, was exactly what I needed. But it was so hard to do because you don't want to do that, because you think about it. It means you have to face, oh my goodness, reality and yourself.
Being alone.
And being alone. But if let's go back to the alcohol I want to talk about, it means you got to face whatever it was you were facing there without that assistance, without that inebriation, without that extra relaxing. If you were talking about money and you had to step away from a job because the job's not working for you, it means you had to face the no job, face the pressures of other people without that. And the only way to do that is by yourself. And it's not by yourself, but it's through yourself, by going within. And that's what I had to do. And I had to sit back and realize the pattern that was growing for me. It wasn't bringing me joy. It wasn't bringing me what I wanted to. And it was, meant that I wasn't even ready for that. And so when I took the time to heal, to be, I started changing the pattern. Even with my job searching, I had to change how I did. And you know what? I didn't have to change. Let me go back. The change that happened in my job searching that I'm doing right now, and the interviews that I'm having, they're night and day to what I used to have.
Oh, good.
But the biggest difference is not that I've gone into it differently. I have had some changes, but I took the time to change. As we grow and go through this, wow, I'm really doing this. Okay. I'm channeling myself here. As we grow and go through this life, any change moment that happens, okay, here's how you got to imagine it. I'm going to put in a linear thinking for yourself, a linear path of your life. Each bubble I put in there, or dot, is a change agent time in your life. Something in your life has changed. It happens to us on a regular basis. We have two options when anything that change happens, or when we're faced with changes and choices. One, we take the change and do what we've always done, and we continue with the pattern and the loop. So next time it comes around, the change, and do the same thing, and you're not growing. You're just dealing with it. Or you can change it, whatever it is. But either way, you take that change and you just go. But what you need to do is anytime a change happens in your life, you need to pause. It doesn't have to be a long 3-day, 3-year pause. No, a simple reflection. What changed? How am I going to change? And what do I need to do to heal from that change? Because anytime a change happens, we are still holding on to what is there because we don't want to face what's in front of us without what we had.
And I want to use an example that I keep coming to. I keep talking to people in the past few years that are like, I want to move. I want to move out of state. I want to move towns. I want to move this. I want to move that. And I'm like, okay, are you moving because there's a benefit, or are you running away from something? Because so many times people don't understand that going to a new place or a new job or a new relationship isn't going to be different if they haven't changed this, if they haven't gone inside and reflected why that past relationship didn't work, that past job didn't work out, what they're trying to run away from, what they're trying to escape. Because if you don't change you on the inside, you're just going to recreate that pattern, that other place, that other relationship, that other job or career. So that's why it's so important. That reflection piece is monumental. And there's been a couple of different people who have come back to me, months or years later and been like, thank you for that, because I would have moved X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't have gotten what I wanted to get because I was still making the same choices, expecting a different result. I was still giving too much to everybody else. I was still spending too much money. Like, all the bad habits were still there.
So let me give you an example here of my own life. All throughout my life, my now ex, who I love, nothing bad against her, And she was writing so many points, was noticing a pattern that I wasn't noticing. And, I'd have a job and then I'd lose the job. And typically what happened when another monument thing was happening in our life, like first job, I lost the first job, or I took a new job and I lost the first job when we bought a house and just had our first kid. And then I took another job and had another kid and had to move that. All this stuff. It was always just this fluctuation and there wasn't a stability.
Mm-hmm.
And even there wasn't stability in the job I was doing. And it took me those years to finally sit back and say, this job itself is an unstable job that requires change. And why am I going for this? What am I doing? What is the priority in my life? And I had to sit back. And one of the toughest decisions I had to make was to not purposely, but ultimately to give up where I was living, what I was doing, and move across the state back here with no job, limited money, had a place to move, but it wasn't really, we had months to wait to get into the place. No idea what was going on. And I had to do all that. And I took jobs working at UPS. I mean, literally loading trucks and driving trucks and doing that stuff. I was selling gutters. I mean, high-end gutters. I was going over. People were buying these gutters. I was doing whatever I had to do. But I remember I said at one point to my ex at that time, when we were before the move, it would be the great job working for this one company doing this type of thing. And when I moved here, after a year, through a connection, I ended up working accidentally, not knowingly, got hired by a company that was owned by that company I wanted to work for.
Nice. Synchronicity.
And then I went through and I moved things around. But what I'm getting to that is I had to grow. I had to change. And I had to do some things, go through things that I thought of, why the heck I hate this type of field to get into, to a point where I just had an interview at a company that I'm like, oh, the only reason they even looked at me is because of what happened in the past few years. Because I'm one of the ideal, on paper, I'm the ideal candidate for that. And that was the company I wanted to work for 6 years ago, whatever, 7 years ago. But I needed to go through all this change. I had to grow myself. I had to break the pattern. I had to take the chances. Because it was a pattern. I was applying for the same type of jobs, putting the same resume out there, doing it the exact same way. And, you get hits here and there, but other people, you wonder what's going on. And I finally had to say, yes, and it's a little work. It's a little effort. I mean, even my resume, it looks nothing like it did the way it did for the past 20 years.
Nice.
My cover letters look nothing like they did for the past 20 years. And things I just had to say, suck it up, make these changes, and do the extra work for myself. Now, that's a very specific, because you can say extra work for myself, but on paper and stuff. But I had to do the work for myself. And I had to realize, it's like when I told a class I taught, why did I get a PhD? Why am I a doctor? I literally sat in a classroom. I did it for 2 of my classes I taught. And I put the word on the board, PhD. And I gave them 10 minutes to figure out why I got a PhD. I had to go into myself, into a deeper understanding of who I was, in order to answer that question for myself, and then get them to try to answer it. And no one got it right. No one got it right. And the answer was so freaking simple. But no one got it right. Because we all thought, here's a great thing about, when I remember doing my dissertation, one of the classroom studies we had to do was on a Mexican restaurant I went to. It was a social science research, okay? See, people, here we go. We want to talk patterns, here we go. It was a social science research. It was in one of my first PhD courses. And we had a group of 3 of us. We had to choose whatever we wanted to. Someone did the Finger Lakes racetrack. People did nursing homes, did families, whatever. We chose to pick a bar. Why the heck not? So we're going to this bar. And now when you do research, the idea is to look for patterns. So this is where you get it. You look for patterns. And so we're there and we're like, oh, look at that. And the bartender's telling stories and all this stuff. And we're like, well, here we go. We were like, and the biggest thing to take away is that the bartender's like the performer doing all this stuff. And the teacher's looking at us. We're giving all this like big wow stuff. And he's like, yeah, missing it. You don't have it. Nope. You're missing it. You said the answer, but you're completely missing it because we overthink everything, especially in ourselves. We overthink the simple things that we do in our own lives that create these patterns that we're doing and the repetition that we're going through. That bar, for example, all it was a facade. There was nothing in the bar that was Mexican except for the name and decorations. Okay? He's like, it's a simple Mexican bar, right? Like, yes. There. All I did, the biggest thing you're missing is that is the simple thing with this. You're doing the study and you're saying there's nothing here that's Mexican. No one here is Mexican. They don't do anything for it. It's just the decorations on the wall. You're missing the simple pattern of the restaurant that is all through. And you tried to find this bigger thing. And when you're trying to find this bigger thing, you overlook what you should be focusing on. Mm. And that's what we did. Now, yeah, there's something to the bartender too. That would happen to be keep people entertained. But it was the simple things that we missed. That all it was a restaurant with a facade of being something like that. And that was the biggest takeaway anyone needed to take from that we were doing in that study. And we missed that stuff. And so in our own lives, the things that we do on a regular basis. Oh, well, we pay our bills like this. Or, you know what, I don't have to pay my bills. Or I don't need to work. Or I need to work. Or I have to work this way. I have to do things this way. And you always have to do it that certain way. Or bring out the alcohol because, you know what, I have to meet my in-laws for dinner tonight. And we go in there and be ready for it. We're afraid to face any type of change. Anything different. I talk too much.
That's okay. This week, guys, everyone watching on the replay, what I'd like you to do is that I'd like you to take 5 or 10 minutes out of your day and reflect on what can I simplify in my life? And there's your homework. What can I simplify in my life? Reflect on that. 5 to 10 minutes this week. See where your patterns are self-sabotaging. Where you're what I call bumping your own nose or stubbing your own toe. Where are you getting in your own way? Because each and every one of us as humans, like Cynthia, you're right. We're taught to overthink from childhood. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So where are we doing that? And where can we scale it back, dial it down, mm-hmm. and get more comfortable with these energies that are bringing those patterns to light and putting things in our face? So thank you.
And on that, let me where can you simplify? Well, let me just give you a little tidbit. If you're thinking about yourself and things you need to do and choices you have and stuff like this, the answer will come to you right away. Mm-hmm. Is it this? You just say yes or no. And if it's a yes, you'll feel it. If it's a no, it takes you time to overthink it, overanalyze. And if you have to overanalyze anything, then it's not a clear yes. If it's coming to you, say, yes, I want to feel good with it. Now, you might have to say, yes, I feel good with it. Now, let me justify it or whatever. Okay, but the first instinct is that, yes, this is right. Then it's right. It's right. Now, it can change 10 months from now if you changed. But right at the bat, if it's yes right away, then instead of it's I don't know about this, then it's really I don't know about this. You still have free choice. The thing is, you have free choice. So your soul is not going to say you have to, you can't do it. But if it's really a yes, they're going to let you know it's going to feel right away. How you get there, the change you have to go through, the healing you have to go through, that's a whole different story. But when you're reflecting on this stuff, you might say, oh my goodness, is my spending all my money on dollar store candy every week really worth, whatever it is, that pattern, drinking the alcohol every night because I can't deal with people, is that really the problem? You'll hear a yes. Then you have to figure out how you're going to deal with it. All right, I'm done talking.
No, I think that's good because I know a lot of people that struggle with trusting their gut. And you're right. If you feel the yes, then you need to address that. Absolutely. So that's
You're
really great.
100% correct
Yeah,
right there.
that's absolutely right. All right, guys. We got some good stuff coming up. Check out Dr. Thomas's YouTube. The link is in the description box. I've got some classes coming up April and May for evidential medium. I also have classes coming up in the fall for connection to spirit. Look for those. And if you have issues with your tissues, if you are struggling, you can always check out my website for more information on integrative energy therapy. All right, guys, have a beautiful rest of your day, and we will talk to you next week.